do that. Okay, I think it's going. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Port of Newport, regular commission meeting, Thursday, November 28th, 2017. Everybody's here. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Just like I mentioned before, on the consent calendar, we've got the Commercial Fishing User Group alternate, so we wanted to add Gary Ribka on there as an alternate for Mike Pettis on the non-pot mortgage.
Okay. Does anybody else have any changes to the agenda?
No. Do we need to have the November 8th Commission work session minutes?
Yes.
Add those to the consent calendar?
Yes.
I actually had a question.
Was it not in the, is it not in the packet?
It wasn't in the packet, but it was posted online.
Okay, so we're going to add the November 8th commission work session meetings. Yes, Sarah.
Well, I was just reading it, the minutes were fine, and
Which one, November 8th?
yeah, the work session, and then along with it, we got the United States Senate, Berkeley, Mulvaney, and all of that. Is the Port of Newport going to be sending a letter of support? Or concern?
Does that answer your question?
That answers my question.
Okay. Okay, so any other changes or anything? Okay, then I'll accept a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
Walter's first, Jeff is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next, correspondence and present. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Wait a second. I got to back up here. I got to go to public comment. Is there anybody in the audience? Yes. State your name.
Rex Green, 255 17th in Newport. I'm just going to direct a question to Aaron tonight. I was just wondering, since you've taken over the port manager position, have you had any new interested parties in using the terminal facility? And if you have, could you tell us who they are and where the talks or negotiations are?
Yeah,
People?
as I previously mentioned, in the meetings, John May, who's a shipper out of Canada, has approached us with some interest about containers, and I don't really have any. There's no negotiations or anything going on there. He has basically looked to see what our capabilities are and what services we might be able to provide with them. Of course, if we were to negotiate or anything like that, I got to go out and get a representative for the port. But yeah, there's not really been any sort of negotiations.
And is he the only one, or?
So the folks that are affiliated with Oregon State University that are doing the wave study, the wave generating energy construction offshore here, they came out and took a tour of the facility. It was in one of my reports. I believe it was in August. But just to, again, learning about what we're capable of and what's there and things like that. And we actually we got a call from a 180-foot fishing vessel the other day, and they were supposed to call me back, but I never got a call from them. They were asking about being able to moor there, and they were asking about possible long-term rates, which you don't have any long-term rates for the terminal right now for fishing vessels specifically. I think that's about it. You said new. You said new folks, right? As in people that have not previously approached this.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Any other public comment? Okay. So we took care of the consent calendar. So now we're going to move on to correspondence and presentations. Richard Stelzner.
He has a written, just an email he wanted included in here on the GM search update. It stands alone there on page 51. And then you'll see an email that came to us from Kevin Mannix of the Oregon Shipping Group that requested that I basically draft a letter of support on behalf of Port of Newport for this Mid-Willamette Valley transload facility that they're trying to get pushed through. I put this in here because this is addressed to me, but of course I don't differentiate between myself and the port in matters like this, so I figured I'd put it before the commission. And he just called me this morning, as a matter of fact, and asked if he would be able to come out to next month's regular meeting and just present to the commission the ideas that he has about this transload facility. And he said that it's best probably to hold off on doing any kind of correspondence until after he gets that chance to do that. So I told him we could get it into the agenda on the December 19th meeting. So that's that.
Okay.
And then the third item there, we've got Rob Mills from SDAO here this evening. I asked him to come out. I learned recently about this program from SDAO that they offer to boards. It's called Board Practice Assessment, which is basically a facilitated discussion. He could describe to you exactly what it consists of. It helps boards, especially boards that are fairly new, kind of decide what direction they want to go and how they want to relate with one another and work through issues. So I'll turn it over to you.
Rob Mills from SDAO, one of the consultants that has been working with this instruments, this consulting tool. It's a relatively new tool that we've used over the last 3 or 4 years. It's intended for member district boards, and it's a self-assessment process based on a 90-minute conversation, a discussion, facilitated discussion that I lead with a board of directors. It's based on the idea that most of our member district boards get real consumed with the business at hand, the content, like your agenda this evening, but they rarely, if ever, take time out to discuss amongst themselves as a board, how are we doing as a board? And we've identified 6 key performance areas that we feel tell a really accurate story and spell out a pretty clear difference between what we would call high-risk and low-risk special districts attributable to the boards of those districts. We call those the 6 key performance areas, and the discussion focuses on those 6 key performance areas. We go through each of the areas, and it's simply getting a board, such as yourselves, to just talk about how they feel they're doing in each of these areas. We have a little rating scheme that we use, very simple, and we ask them to rate themselves in each of these areas after we've had a short conversation. And within a week following the 90-minute meeting, the board receives from me a summary of the ratings that they gave themselves in each of these areas, along with comments that I was able to capture in notes that I took while they were having the discussion. And the intent there is for the board then to take that information and look at the strengths and weaknesses that they identified in that discussion, and if they feel it's appropriate, taking action on the areas of weakness that they might have identified. Again, this is a self-assessment. This is not the facilitator's assessment of a board or SDAO's assessment. This is purely a board self-assessment, analyzing their own strengths and weaknesses in each of these 6 key performance areas. We've done this now with about a little over 50 member districts, about a half a dozen of which are ports, and most of the feedback is that it was a conversation such as we've never had before. That's what board members say, and that's what it's intended to be. It's a conversation not about content, but about process. What's going on around the table of the board of directors or board of commissioners? We have a 60 and a 90-day follow-up that we do, following up on the in addition to the summary that I would send you within a week, I send a one-page document called Consultants' Impressions and Recommendations. Overall impressions from what I gleaned from the 90-minute conversation, along with any recommendations that I think the board was actually articulating for themselves, or with a little help from me, might have verbalized. And those would be recommendations that they might want to take action on, areas of strength and areas of weakness. So we do a 60-day follow-up on that, and then with the expectation that a board would take some action on actionable items to make improvements where needed. And then a 90-day follow-up to just kind of close out the intervention. All of this is a free service from SDAO. It's included in the 8 hours of free consulting service that you get annually from SDAO. And I guess that is my description of the what we call the Special District Board Practices Assessment. So, how about that?
How about that? So does anybody have any questions for Rob?
Yes.
It says that the SDIS is offering the EPA to a member district as an option for earning insurance contribution discounts.
Yes.
And so if we all did this, we get a 2% discount credit on
Yeah,
insurance.
that's actually being changed after the first of the year to a 4% premium credit. And the reason for that is that over time this has proved to be of value enough that it is, and it has more of a involvement of a board that it's deemed to be worthy of a 4% premium credit after January 1. So that could combine with some of the other options that you have, and I think you have up to 14% available to you if you take advantage of all the options, including this board practices assessment. Yeah.
Sure.
You listed Port of Newport in the districts that have completed this.
Yes. All but I think Walter Chuck was here.
There's one more sneak in the back.
Okay. You participated
Yeah, I did. It was
back
very-
in January of 2015.
Very worthwhile.
And but none of the other board, this is a new board and a new manager. But yes, the board did participate 2.5 years ago.
So these dates that you were talking about, is there a cutoff date here, or?
Well, the cutoff date for getting premium credit for 2017 is passed. I think it's
Okay.
mid-November. So you would be, if you're interested in pursuing this, you would be looking at the year 2018, doing it in 2018. Generally, there's about a 2-month lead time so that I can coordinate my schedule. I'm the one who does these, the only one so far. And generally about a 2-month lead time to coincide with your agenda and my schedule and so on. But it's easily arranged, and I'm local. I live just down in Seal Rock, so I'm easily accessible. It's not as if I have to travel a long distance.
Yes, Karen.
We actually have maxed out our discounts for this coming year, so it would be better to do it in 2018 anyway.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, I appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions? Yes?
I'd say it's worthwhile, and once we get the BGM,
Yeah.
we should schedule that. Have that done.
Make that on our January to-do list. January to-do list.
Next year.
Yeah, next year. Thank you, Rob. I
Yes.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm going to
Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, old business. Items removed from the consent calendar. We didn't have any. Accounts paid. Everybody had a chance to look at those? Anybody have any questions? Okay, I need a motion.
I move that we approve the accounts paid.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Lackey. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Dulce Energy.
It's all there. So I don't see them here right now, and I didn't talk to them earlier today, so they're not here. We should probably skip that one.
Okay. New business. The NOAA mortgage policy.
Yeah, page 61. So over the past month, I got an email from the Mock B commanding officer, Captain Keith Roberts, and he raised the question or raised the issue that over the last year or so, it's become much more commonplace for, I think it started out sort of as ships coming in for a day or two here or there at some point. They've been in Jim Durkee's reports to the commission that the ships were calling at the NOAA pier, but I don't know that it really caught anybody's attention. So it's increased to the point where it's pretty significant now. And the CO down there at Mock B has requested that we address usage of the pier in a lease agreement more clearly. Currently, let me go back. So if these ships were not born at NOAA for free, the only other alternative to the size of it, they have to go to the terminal. So basically, the choices that we might have would be to you could say, we don't want them to moor at the NOAA pier, and instead we'd rather have them moored down at the terminal. Or you might be able to decide what sort of rate it would require for them to moor at the NOAA pier. We need to establish that rate, and we also need to require commensurate insurance with vessels of that type of size if we're gonna have more there. The current lease with NOAA only references the original solicitation for offers regarding details about usage of the pier, and that's that same thing you found too, right? So Pete looked at it as well. We both looked at it, and there's nothing in the lease that actually talks about who's going to be at the pier. It just refers back to the SFO, and I believe that probably the reason for that is that because within that solicitation for offers, there's these two clauses here that I've got listed. One is that NOAA must be the sole occupant of the pier to avoid conflicts with other vessels. And the other one is that the offered piers must be managed solely by NOAA. And if you put those two together, I would imagine that probably when that was written, it was written by NOAA, probably from the standpoint that they wanted to be able to have direct control over the pier so that they could increase security and have ease of operations. The port agreed to the SFO, as did NOAA at the time. It's initialed and signed. But probably, I'm guessing that the port looked at that and said, okay, well, NOAA's going to be the sole occupant. And NOAA's, they probably read it the same way with a slightly different tone. However, they would have projected maintenance fee or maintenance costs at the NOAA pier based upon what they anticipated was the usage that was being advertised at that time. So if you throw in these additional vessels, basically it increases. It'll increase our cost of maintenance at the NOAA pier, and so it's something we should definitely take a look at, and whether or not the port wants to have other vessels mooring at NOAA, or if we should send them to the terminal, and then if we do have more at the NOAA pier, I'd recommend that we make sure that we require proof of insurance, and we need to decide on or basically figure out what the moorage fee would be. So I'd recommend a motion authorizing an amendment to the NOAA lease that would allow vessels to moor there in a limited fashion with a moorage rate that will cover the port's cost of maintenance and requires adequate liability insurance.
Commissioners, if you have any questions?
Who do they call? They call NOAA and say, hey, we want to come and dock at your dock?
Yeah, that's the way it had kind of grown up. Was that at some point they allowed boats to pull in and tie up there. So.
But these are people doing work for NOAA, correct? I mean, there's
Yeah,
a connection. No?
Probably Stuart would best know exactly the inner workings of how they work together. But I know some of them, there's some sort of national science association that they kind of do work together for, but they're not really affiliated directly, as I understand.
I think that goes, one of the questions I have is, why would the port want to do this? What benefit is it to us, other than a risk?
Well,
They're
that's.
there already.
I guess we got
What's
to.
that? I mean, all we're doing is saying there's a possibility that a ship could damage the dock. There's increased wear on the dock. There's let alone aside from the insurance associated with it, I think there's another real aspect of if somebody's injured or the liability associated with somebody who may enjoy the town a little bit too much and it comes back and injures themselves, is what exposure does the port have if we endorse them tying up here? That would be most likely outside of the insurance that the ship would carry, would be my guess. But I'd still come back to, aside from a feel-good, what benefit is this to the port to have them tied up north?
That's a really good question. I can't really tell you exactly, other than additional revenue, but it's not like I don't believe that we're going to be, the amount of revenue that we're going to bring in, depending on what the rate turned out to be, would probably not be significant to the extent that it's going to really be something great for the port. I think you have to be cognizant of the idea that at some point that pier could basically may be in competition with the international terminal for moorage at some point. And that's something to bear in mind, I think, as well. But the idea that I had, the way that we would come up with what the fees would be to find out exactly what these vessels are paying elsewhere, and then that would be basically, and compare that with what our maintenance costs are, make sure our maintenance costs are covered, and then figure out some place around in that realm where that fee ought to be. But I can't tell you that it would bring in. It certainly, like, let's say, for example, somebody was to stand up a very robust industry for research, the specialized work that research vessels need. It might support that. It would support some of the marine trades, as we discussed out at the Port of Toledo a little while back. I mean, it increased traffic in the area so that you would have more room for industry there, especially in the science realm. But that's about the best I can come up with offhand right now.
Couple question. What is the CEO's preference?
He said that he would like to get it addressed, basically explicitly in the lease, and he said he doesn't not want them there. I would say that he is good either way. Is the impression that I got.
Do they have a process in place to charge vessels?
No.
Or do they have to come up with something?
No, it would have to go. The easiest route to do that, I think, would be to send it to the port. But then you get in this situation where somebody else is controlling, because they have to have operational control over the pier. That's written in there. So then, do we want someone else to control that? I don't know.
It's got no way of invoicing for any of this. It has to go through the port.
Well, Stuart brings up a lot of good. Did you want to say something?
No, I'll get wait.
Okay.
Discussion.
Yeah, I just you brought up some good points about injury if somebody gets injured off, and what kind of door do you open for this kind of stuff? See, I thought it was just strictly they were just supporting one of the NOAA vessels, but apparently that's not what this is. So.
I think I don't know. I mean, that's another good question. Is what kind of vessels would you allow to tie up there? Any vessels or just doing science? I'm sorry.
God forbid one of the vessels that ties up has a problem, can't move, and you've got another boat, NOAA vessel coming. I mean, it happens, especially to us. Yes.
Well, I think it goes back to the fact that NOAA is giving them the go-ahead to dock there.
Well,
Or who's...
They are,
just
but they
come
brought
in
it to
court,
our
"Oh,
attention."
look at that nice dock over there. I mean, somebody's saying it's okay. And then if you charge for it, maybe they'll say, oops, that one's over. We don't want to go to Newport anymore. And it might decrease traffic, not increase it. So, but I mean, someone's giving them authority to dock there.
That's the way, my understanding of the way that it came about was they tied it into that, NOAA has direct control over the dock, right? So at some point in time, someone took the liberty there to say, sure, come on in because we control the dock. And, as I'm sure most of the commission is aware, especially with organizations like this where the commanding officer rotates every few years, the new person comes in and with a fresh set of eyes says, hang on a second. And sometimes you can see, and this for one way or the other, I think we should address it for that specific point in particular, because you can have a new CO come in a few years that wants to do something completely different, and I think we need to firm it up.
Do you have a question, Walter?
No, I just had a couple things. I know the Coast Guard has mowned there before, and I think the reason they did that is because they can be secure. So I mean, I think if we do something, we should have some exemptions for some type of vessels that can only moor there. If we had a Coast Guard vessel that needed to moor and put them at the terminal, they need a secure site. So it would make more sense for them to be at NOAA. The same would go for Army Corps of Engineers. I mean, would there be an exemption for government vessels or research? Wouldn't be. It's a can of worms that we need to talk about, but I mean, there's arguments on both sides.
So Pete, weigh in.
I was going to say one benefit of sole control is they then have sole liability. If they allow somebody on there who damages something beyond normal wear and tear, we may have to go to court of claims to get the reimbursement, but once we get into some kind of an organizational or organized manner of renting it out, we would have to have our own insurance. The concern I have is how this incidental use started becoming greater and greater. Like I say, none of us know why. And I have to give the commander credit for basically owning up for it, because I do recall they did want control because they're a Homeland Security operation. They can't have people assigned to that pier because we want them to. So that part's understandable, but the sole control is actually to our benefit, I think. And the only analogy I can think of would be like rental units. Somebody stays overnight. You know, you're not going to sit there and say, hey, I want to charge that person one night's rent because you let somebody stay in a spare bedroom. But also you let somebody stay for 3 months. Mm-hmm. It's become something different, and I don't know where they cross the line on this one. I don't know how much use they've put it to over the years. But the lease does provide for normal wear and tear is on the lessor. If it's anything beyond normal wear and tear, it would be on them. So they do run the risk if they start getting too free with this usage that they could go beyond that. So you folks can make it as formal as you want or as informal, or leave it this way, or maybe rely on this commander's say so. But if we go down we're not going to let them be the sole controllers of that pier anymore, then the amendment, maybe 20 pages of amendment trying to figure out how to weigh the different risks back and forth.
What if we were to try and work it into the lease somehow or another that there is somehow a quantifiable charge for usage, and still allow them to control what the volume and rate of the usage is, but basically say, if there's going to be 6 ships tied up, or
daily fee, like a daily fee or something.
I don't know. That's just like, would that be able to allow us to account for increased usage but still give them control? Can we do that?
There could probably find some wording that would limit the like us not have any control. All we get out of it is an additional enhancement fee of some sort. And we'd recognize somewhere in the recitals that it's to reimburse us for unanticipated wear and tear, because we expected only NOAA vessels to be there generally. Although I do remember the discussion, they did say there would be incidental usage by visiting vessels when they were changing crews or they would be changing whatever the heck they do out there. They did tell us that there would be incidental use. Nobody ever said somebody would be moored there for a month, or I don't know what the longest stay is.
38 days.
38 days, yeah.
But I don't know the reason, offhand.
And you don't want to know the reason. Just kidding.
But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
they could have had a mechanical casualty.
Right.
I don't know.
But it was intended for incidental use because it's not convenient to send somebody somewhere else. So it was always anticipated that they would have exclusive use of the dock. And again, it's like if you go back to renting a home, you could let somebody stay at your bedroom for a couple nights or whatever. But also, you let a family move in for 3 months. It's a whole different animal at that point. So whatever we're acquiescing to, just be careful that it's what the port wants to acquiesce to, not necessarily what they want us to. It sounds like the commander doesn't really care either way, but
He just wants to make sure he wants it a little less ambiguous. Probably, well, some of that's
Yep.
personal preservation. You want to make sure that
right.
So.
Well, they actually spread the use out over time anyway, so I got, like I said, I'm going to give them credit for coming up to it.
Is this something we have to decide on tonight?
No, I don't think so. I just brought it up. I can have further discussions with the CEO over there. And
I think that would be a really good idea because I feel like I'm not getting all the information here. I mean, I have the facts here, but I'm curious what the CEO, he might have a proposal possibly within his, I don't know.
Ultimately, it's our
I realize
risk.
that,
I
yeah.
mean, and my gut feeling is this guy would love for us to tell him, forget it, we can't park anything but NOAA ships there. And he'd be done with it. He doesn't have to worry about it. Short of an emergency situation, which maybe there could be a clause in there that obviously we're not going to tell somebody forget it kind of deal. But again, as anybody that operates ships knows, things happen, especially when you're tied up as well. I mean, these guys, one of these ships had a crew member that went kind of crazy, and they had armed guards out there with machine guns standing on the dock.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, he made active threats, and that entered into the NOAA security facility. I mean, and that was a visiting ship. I mean, it's just things happen that if we take this on, NOAA's going to be like, you guys are charging it, you guys figure it out. And if there's a problem, figure it out.
Okay.
But it's just an example of how things go.
So your feeling would be just to
Sarah.
make it NOAA?
Yeah.
Only
Said,
that's it?
we've got another option in the port, and I think if there's a question of an emergency situations, that's not what we're talking about here. I think what NOAA likes to do is say, hey, yeah, come park at our spot, and which works fine as long as nothing bad happens. But as soon as something weird happens, you're going to get a lot of finger pointing, especially dealing with self-insured federal assets.
Yes, Sarah.
I just think that it would be worth pursuing what Aaron just said about some daily rate that we don't interrupt either of these clauses, and it's their dock and they can invite who they want, but if you get excess people other than the NOAA or government, we want a little money for it, as long as we don't have to take over any liabilities for it.
Possibly work it into your tariff, maybe your current tariff rates. Is that a possibility? I haven't looked at those lately, but.
I think there's a number of different possibilities we can probably stick in there. One other thing for context the reason he said that when he said that the thing that popped into emails was that he got I think a letter or a thank you note from, I think it was Scripps, who said that they were looking forward to working with him in the future. And so, they basically, that's when he said, hang on a second, we really need to, if they're looking at making this a regular call for the next year or something like that, so there's a possibility that because if they're getting it for no charge, that's a great deal for, so it's probably just going to start attracting people at some point.
I wasn't aware that Scripps was doing that. Okay.
So I can say, so Scripps has been there, University of Washington's been there, University of Alaska Fairbanks has been there. I think the Falcor, which is a private oceanographic institute, wanted to come into Newport but had trouble with some pilotage issues they were planning on tying up there. But it's an interesting point. Like you say, people will want to come. And I think the other thing you got to be a little careful about, or at least one of the things that I'd be considered is, so how do you exclude anybody, or would you exclude them?
Yeah, you get into a gray area.
What if somebody does something bad and you say, we never want these jokers here again? We're going to write that into the policy, X, Y, or Z. It's a little bit more of a can of worms that we need to really seriously consider, in my opinion, before we jump in.
Well, I'm leaning toward, I'm sorry, Sarah.
I just think that, if you look at the growth pattern of business in Newport and stuff, that a lot of research is becoming a bigger picture, oceanographic research and collaborative research with the fishing industry. And, like I say, I don't want to have anything to do with inviting anyone to the dock, but if they're inviting them anyway, get a little money for it and hopefully not scare them away and get more business in town. Collaborating with Scripps sounds like fun to me.
Well, I understand how you feel, but I tend to agree with Pete, you know, sole liability, sole control.
Yeah, I'm saying keep that, just what Aaron said, maybe fit it into some other real casual agreement.
I don't know if you'd have room for that.
For which that room where in the
You know,
time.
are you talking about like just on a per case basis or something?
Well, no, you mentioned that, you know, you could have a,
When I
Daily.
said sole control, sole liability, that means just know it. That's it.
yeah, well, it isn't just Noah. They invite whoever they want, obviously.
Exactly.
So that's on them as it is now. That doesn't have to change. Just say, oh, by the way, anything other than Noah, we'd like some daily fees for maintenance.
I just think we're going to open ourselves up when we start charging for other vessels to be there. I don't know why. I just got that strange feeling.
I'd have to look at your tariff. It may be possible to call them a transient vessel and define it in such a way that even if it's NOAA that allows it there, that they still owe the money. I mean, we could figure out a way to keep them at arm's length. The person actually docked there wouldn't interact with us other than writing us a check. It's possible. I'm not saying that you could do
It
it.
could be very.
But if you could put it in your tariff somehow, you include them in your definitions that you already have in there, we could let the commander know, look, anybody that shows up, yeah, you let anybody on this pier you want, but they still can't be here for free, and here's why, and just have our tariff apply. I don't know. I'd have to look at that.
But yeah, I haven't looked at it in that context. So.
Because that way we're not exposing ourselves in the lease amendment, but we're still saying as a, you know, we kind of govern this harbor. Obviously, that's what we're here for. So I guess you could call it transit vessel, even though NOAA allowed them to be there, or say, look, that's cool, but the price of being here is still X. You still have to comply with the Port of Newport's tariffs and fees. I'm just throwing ideas out there. I'm not saying that's possible, but at least that'd be one way to keep it separate. And hopefully charge something. Maybe.
Do you want? Yes, Walter.
I agree with Pete. I think that we start opening ourselves up to liability. We start just charging people. I think we should maybe have a couple people sit down with Noah and maybe Pete and Aaron and hammer this out. I can see where there'd be some exceptions, like maybe dredge or like I said, the Coast Guard. But as far as other vessels, we can only have a facility across the bay that they should be using.
Sure.
That we control, that we have control over.
I feel like we just need a little bit more dialogue and more information. So, Stuart, would you be willing to participate in that? You and me?
Yeah.
Sure. And Aaron? And Pete? And the commander?
Sounds good.
Could we put something together
Sure
so we
can.
can... I'm sure you're going to ask all the right questions.
Hopefully I'm not a stick in the mud.
And all... Compared to me, I'm sure not. Okay.
She's got to kind of freak me out. Folks are down there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what we'll do.
I
Okay.
mean, if that's all right.
Is that okay with you guys, Sarah?
Yep.
Is that okay, Walter? Okay.
Have fun, Stuart. You too.
Okay. So we'll set up a time for that.
Yes.
Aaron, you just let me know what works, and we'll put that together.
Sure
So
will.
I noticed Pulse Energy. So we're going to go backwards here. So go ahead.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Sorry for being late. I was counting on 2 rotations of the one laner.
Yeah, there was an accident out.
Yeah, it was bad. Let's see. Can I pull this out?
Let me turn on the projector because I turned it off so.
Okay. I just need to pull up. Oh, sure. Okay.
zoomed it to what looked clear to me, but I wear glasses, so you tell me if it needs to focus.
Yeah.
Okay, again, I apologize for being late. I was in Corvallis teaching all day, and I thought I had enough time. What I wanted to go, it struck me this morning when I was, purpose here was to try to give you folks an update on exactly where we are as a company, what our needs are, and what progress we've made since the last meeting. And I live in Portland, and I teach in Corvallis. And, we've set up this business, or Dulce Energy, and this is our new brand. And it hit me this morning when I was getting gas. I have about 6 big coolers in my pickup truck, and the guy says, "Are you going fishing?" And I said, "No, actually, I'm going down to pick up some seaweed." And he said, "Well, you need something to wrap the fish in." And that kind of struck me, as I've been so involved with this ever since I was on the Today Show, supporting Oregon State on the seaweed that tastes like bacon. I think it behooves everybody to show you where we've come and exactly what we've gone. And this is a pretty short presentation, but I wanted to show you this first. This is the Specialty Food Association's Trend Spotters top. This was last week. And as you can see, what they've showed is that the number one trend for specialty foods is plant-based foods, and for meat alternatives, algae is winning fans because of its sustainability and protein. So that's where that was today, and so what I really wanted to do, this is part of an investment deck that I show, but I think Dulce Energy is the name of the company. We have several brands, but what we really do well is we farm restaurant quality sustainable vegetables. That's what we do. We produce market great tasting food, and we process sea vegetables into high quality breeds. And I've got 2 examples that I want to show everybody on how we've been able to monetize this as we on a go forward basis. And so what the market really wants is they are looking for alternative protein source, they're looking for sustainable foods, and they're also looking for products around the world. Portland and Oregon has a special meaning for a lot of people because of its reputation. And then on the bigger picture, what the world really needs is technologies to produce enough food to feed 10 billion people, a solution to climate change, and to conserve the world's arable fresh water. This is an example of a product we launched. This was our first product. It was a seaweed salad dressing that was at New Seasons. And this was their fastest selling seaweed salad dressing when we launched it, 450 bottles the first week. It's since matured a little bit, but it's still on the shelves. And give you a little idea of the numbers is we can typically get production of about 150 pounds per month per tank. And these are 6,000 liter tanks growing. Ounces per tank. This particular product had 6.5% seaweed in it. So if you calculate ounces in bottles, wholesale manufacturing costs, this was a profit per bottle. So if you just extend that, sales per month per tank is about 16,000 profit per month per tank. Give you an idea of how much this can produce in an positive economic thing. The other thing we've done, John, is we've aligned ourselves with a specialty food distributor up in the Portland metropolitan area. And these people, they deal in high-end specialty foods like chanterelle mushrooms and truffles and caviar, and they basically trade all around the world in these high-end products for restaurants that are in demand. And we've set up this customer, and for the first 4 weeks, we've shipped them about 600-700 pounds of the Dulce seaweed, which we deliver fresh on every Monday morning. And these have gone out to and they do nothing but FedEx ship. And these are the restaurants that we've gotten in the last 4 weeks of people that are having Dulce, fresh Dulce from the Oregon coast on their menu. And I'll give you an example of one that we had. This is a restaurant called Martina. It is an Argentinian restaurant in Minneapolis. And on their menu, they had Swiss chard, Dulce seaweed, toasted garlic, and lime. That was one of the products. So the interesting thing about this is, without any promotion on our part, we're able, in a very short time, to get it out to many, many restaurants around the country, which we see as a huge value for an economic development. And of course, because it's different, it's unique, it's very nutritious, there's a great story behind it, etc. So how do we do it? We basically have a licensed, patented C3 strain from Oregon State University, and we've developed what we consider an optimal tumble culture, meaning we know how much this stuff grows in the tanks that we're using. And we think we can duplicate that as a scalable model farm. And the markets that have expressed interest in our product, of course, are restaurants, which we're already doing and we want to continue, grocery stores, supplements, nutraceuticals, skincare, health and beauty, pet food, animal feed. This goes on and on and on. So why is the world better off? Well, for every pound that grows, it consumes 4 pounds of carbon dioxide. This is a new trend there's a new area called blue carbon, where they're looking at the carbon capture ability in coastal communities, and this may qualify very well. They're looking at algae very carefully. But it doesn't need to be planted because it doesn't come from a seed. It doesn't use any fresh water. It doesn't need to be fertilized. The whole product can be consumed, and it's got twice the protein of corn. So as you can see, there's a lot of advantages to the product as it is. We've tested about 6 products in the food category, and we've sensory tested these up the Food Innovation Center, and we've got basically there's a $15 billion available market for us to produce products that have seaweed as an ingredient, especially dulse. So we have 3 products in the pipeline. We've got seaweed. We're going to smoke seaweed. This is the dried seaweed. This is currently being sold by a company out of Maine, and they're basically harvesting it off the rocks, foraging it, and putting it in and drying it and selling it at Whole Foods for about $60 a pound retail. These are some expanded dressing, and these are some seasonings. So basically, and the team as me as a founder, I'm an instructor at Oregon State University. I've got about 25 years of marketing and sales experience in manufacturing, and I have an MBA from the University of Chicago. And Jason Bush is my partner. He's currently the director of the Oregon Wave Energy Trust, and he's got a law degree from Lewis and Clark in land law. And Josh Gonzalez is our man on the ground. He's working now currently at Oregon State University. He's going for his master's in aquaculture, and he's the person on day-to-day on the tanks. So the key to this whole thing, again, as I come up, is seawater and Newport, and I want to make an argument for both of those. And that basically the seawater, the summer upwelling is ideal for our nutrient base for the growth. It's the only growth media we need, but we need it. We're pioneering an industry, and I think that's important, especially here and what we're doing. We've got jobs, and we can also mitigate climate change with our product. Newport is important to us because of the Hatfield Marine Science Center, the Marine Studies Initiative. I have a meeting Thursday with Jack Barth, who is the director of that, and we're going to push Hatfield in the area of this aquaculture research and this blue carbon capture. I'm going to meet with him on Thursday. Thanks for the tip there, Stuart. So the key factors of success of what we need is we need seawater. That's the key. If we don't have any water, there's no seaweed, there's no profit. There's no company. Any way we look at it, this is going to be a significant investment, not in the millions, but of course it is going to be some investment that we're all as a group, we're going to have to be made. And we can't fund the entire amount by ourselves, and that's simply because we've got a loan from Business Oregon to start the business off with, and we can devote some of that, but we can't devote all of it, of course, because we need working capital and other things to keep the company going. The port has asked for alternatives, and we've developed 2, which we've taken a couple more steps, and I wanted to just show you that right now. Option A is one we've been working on the longest time. That's taking a pipe from the Hatfield Marine Science Center. The advantage of that is we don't need any new permits, which means time and money. There's an adequate amount of water. The quality's adequate. It's a relatively simple process. The initial quotes came in very high, but Jason has been working with some of the development people, and we've asked this local fella for an alternative quote, which we think may come in at a more reasonable area than we were talking about. Option B is to drill a well on site. We had some positive breakthroughs on this. Jason was in a meeting this morning with a company called Geoengineers in Portland. They're actually very, very skilled at this idea, and we had originally thought maybe we had to dig a diagonal well, and that's a more technical thing. But their recommendation, and the best recommendation that they gave, was to drill 2 very small test wells, because the key is, according to this, and I'm not a scientist, and I just got this over the phone from Jason, is that as they go down, first layer they go through is seawater. I mean regular water, and then the seawater is denser, so it lays down farther. So they want to drill through there, and they'll get to the seawater, and then they want to drill a parallel drill some distance away, because it's not so much getting the seawater that's the important thing. It's if they can pump the seawater and there's not enough there that's available, you'll start getting the fresh water, and that'll contaminate the whole thing. But they can do the 2 test drills, and they can determine just by those whether we're good to go and how much we can do, which I think is a pretty positive thing. And they said it was about $10,000 to drill the 2 test wells, okay? And I guess what that's going to do for us as an option is it's going to be a permanent water supply to the property. And the downsides, of course, is we have permits issues, disposal quality, some other things that we'll have to deal with. But that's a good option that I think that we do. It looks to me like if we're going to make this thing work, it's going to have to be a combined effort between us, Dulce Energy, the port. Jason's been talking to some of the development people in the city, the county, the state. As I said, I've got a meeting with Jack Barth at Thursday at OSU. We're trying to look at creative ways he might be able to help from his standpoint that might help use the property. And that's my basic recommendation. We do have one other one that I've got. I went driving home from San Francisco. I went through Sisters, and this fellow's a local guy. Mark McPherson. I don't know if you know him. His dad was Gordon McPherson. And anyway, he's got this truck for sale. It's a 2,000 gallon truck. That he's willing to sell. He's going to actually be in town tomorrow on some other business. But this is a truck we could buy, and if we could find a place to pull up, get some water, and we could get going with that. So that's as best as I've been able to do in terms of options and where we're at. I think it's important. I think the business is important for the future. I don't think it's a trend. I mean, I don't think it's a fashion. I think there's so many different things going on that if we make this place ground zero for this type of agriculture on the West Coast, I think there's so many other benefits that could go. Not to mention just the commercial benefit of having a profit-making enterprise that's paying rent on that piece of property. So that's kind of my pitch.
Okay.
Can I answer any questions? I'd be happy to. Yes, sir.
Are you going after any grants or anything like that?
We are.
We
are. We've applied for a SBIR grant, which is we'll know in March. That's the only active one we've done. As far as my understanding, and Jason is my operations guy, my understanding is that Business Oregon has some money for grants for infrastructure. He also mentioned to me that he's been talking with the city and the county, also have small amounts of grants. So our talk is that it seems to me if everybody pitches in, we can find. My recommendation would be to have the engineers on the vertical well send a real live quote in so we can have a look at it to the port. And then my thought is that if we can get water at this property, you've got a tenant for life, and if my business plan is right, I'll be making a lot of money, and that will be good for everybody down the line. So that's as best as I can answer your question right now.
Just I asked because there's some aquaculture grants right now from NOAA. It's called Self-Sculpting Entity.
I didn't know. I appreciate it. I'd like to follow up with that. Thank you.
And you've already talked to Business Oregon, right?
Yeah.
Was it Mariah?
Yeah. They have an infrastructure thing. They think around 60,000 or 30,000. The number changes every day.
There's also a USDA grant. I think it's called a Rural Business Development Grant, and that's for the purposes of infrastructure planning. So any engineering that you have to get done, that's another one that we put out.
Okay. Okay.
All right, does commissioners have any questions? Well, Chuck, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And I think we're looking forward to seeing some paperwork and
Okay.
some numbers
Yeah, for sure.
and see what we can do
Thank you.
on our side.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we jump into staff reports. Director of Finance. Are you up, Mark?
Here, on page 63, the staff report, in addition to the monthly financial statements in the board packet, I went ahead and summarized the revenue for the first 4 months of this fiscal year compared to the first 4 months of last fiscal year. There was a 7% increase this year over last year. You can see where these come out listed by location or profit center. Keep in mind, the South Beach Marina and RV Park is coming off of their busy summer. And the RV Park manager's occupancy report that follows indicates that activity is slowing down as it normally does in October. The crab push that's coming up will bump up the commercial marina revenues. So some of these, depending on the season, are kind of increase different intervals.
Okay. Good deal. Yes, Jeff, you had a
I just
question?
wanted to say I forwarded some questions to Aaron. Many of them were on the accounting, and Aaron and Mark answered those questions. I want to thank you for that. And I emailed those questions, and they're in the supplemental briefing book that was sent out here yesterday or today. But just wanted to thank Mark and Aaron for getting that information. I emailed out the questions rather than wait until tonight, just so we could streamline things, give you a heads up, and mainly the financial questions most from my own standpoint, just understand some things, and Mark answered those questions, and I appreciate the gains that have been being made that Todd Kimball explained and that Mark has explained, and so just thank you for that. I didn't want to expand on, don't need to expand on what they were, but so thank you.
All right. Good deal. Anybody have any questions? No? Okay, General Manager, Pro Tem, report. Aaron.
Alrighty. So as I mentioned here, we made the necessary arrangements as I spoke about last month to stand up a second shift of the commercial hoist dock and start the crab season. Of course, that will be dependent upon when season starts and then actually when they start to fish, based on prices. It's been the request of multiple parties who consist mainly of fish buyers. This was also something we talked about at the recent commercial fishing user group meeting. If the volume's low out there and we can't pay for the employee over the course of the shift, we'll shut it down. I have assurances from several buyers that they will easily have the volume to support the operation. And likewise, if service remains busy through the season, we can stand up more employees as the demand dictates. I've taken feedback from several fish buyers who are very interested in changing to a fee schedule for loading services that's based upon a percentage per pound. I'm very interested to hear what kind of feedback there might be on that idea. I've heard it kicked around a number of times, and so I usually, whenever I hear it come up several times and I don't hear a counter to it, I always wonder, okay, what is it that caused us not to implement this already? And so there may be something there that I don't know about. I'm just putting it out there because I'm sure somebody will have some ideas on either side of that. But some of the benefits that it does is it makes some of the, so right now our billable services, which are done off of service tickets, if you went to something that was done by pound, it would be based upon the fish tickets that come in. Or basically what the fishermen are mandated to file what their catch weight is, and you can base the cost off of that. And some of the buyers have said that it makes it way easier for them to account for in that fashion on their end, because they can attribute costs to specific boats much faster instead of waiting for us to bill them, which sometimes, as we mentioned in that email, takes, because of our processes, our billing gets behind. So it creates this real clunky kind of ebb and flow of money. After hearing concerns at the recent commercial fishing user group meeting about having enough places to offload catch, I've begun just a very preliminary evaluation of using Port Dock 1 for that purpose. It's still a lot to do about that, but again, along the same vein, I stick it out there as an idea. I talked to a couple folks in town about the possibility of doing that. People seem interested in it, but again, curious to hear what the backside of it is. And obviously, Port Dock 1 needs a lot of work. It's got wood pilings, and it's there'll be a lot of coordination to have take place with the city, because that's where those sea line docks are. There's a lot of tourism there. There's a lot of that going on there. But in any case, that was one of the requests that they made, was to see if there were more places where we could come up with where they could offload catch. I briefly talked with Teevan Brothers this month. They indicated that they are still interested in at least shipping finished lumber by barge, not longer than 300 foot for the barge size, and using the existing laydown space at the west end of the pier. But that's everything is contingent upon if we're able to work out usage at the terminal. And so that generally their impression, most people's impression, is that we cannot do shipping at the terminal at this point in time because various perceptions, and it's just the way that people view things. So that's the first thing that they brought up. They said, well, if you can work out the usage out there, why then we would be interested in approaching some of their customers for barge traffic. Going back to something I brought up last month, going out to hire temp labor has been extremely difficult. We got one guy after 3 weeks of trying. We had to raise the rate we were offering based on that one, based upon the trying to get him in. Our wage step matrix has not been adjusted for cost of living increases in recent years. Particularly with the rise in minimum wage, our pay bumps have not kept the port competitive in our labor offerings. Many of the lower label wage steps, and you'll see a copy of that on page 71. If you look on the top line there, they're starting to get grayed out because it's being taken. And then on the administration, on the level 3, the first block, it's starting to get grayed out by the increase in minimum wage. So many of the lower wage steps are canceled out because of the minimum wage increase. The rise in the cost of labor in the area is outpacing our wage steps. We're currently being outbid by other ports, municipalities, and industries in the region who are keeping up, and as a result, we can't effectively hire and retain employees at current rates. I just got another 2-week notice from a accounting specialist down here in South Beach who's leaving us in favor of $3 more per hour in wages. A recent survey of 7 other ports along the West Coast revealed that for maintenance and accounting wages, the Port of Newport is the low bid for labor along those 7 ports. We do not anticipate hiring on the maintenance crew this year because we don't pay enough to bring in the people into these positions who possess the qualifications we're asking for, and we haven't funded the projects that these employees will perform. Fortunately, there is ample room in the budget for us to adjust our current wages to make the port more competitive as a consumer of labor, and I intend to do that in a fashion that will target the lower level maintenance and accounting staff, as well as the RV park manager, who is currently paid $16.80 an hour for managing the entire RV park. After making the adjustments, we project still to have a $70,000 surplus at least. Depending on how we do it, we could have up over $100,000 surplus in the budget. This includes all ancillary benefits such as PERS, insurance, PTO, etc. And it's become an operational necessity because we can't bring in temp labor at the rates that we're currently offering, so that we can surge our capacity for crab and the other things that we face. I had not really intended to touch this issue, but it's become a glaring one for us right now. And I further recommend that moving ahead in the next budget cycle, that the port take a look at the pay scale, do a study on cost of living increases, and adjust accordingly, and look at that. So I have next month's calendar meetings, the director of operations issues. With the upcoming project will be the RV dump station in South Beach. It was a project in the capital improvements list for this fiscal year. We want to get started before the rain picks up. Quotes are in. We should be able to get started. That was on last month's consent calendar as well. There is interest from Anderson Construction, which is the same company who built NOAA. They're the ones who are going to be doing the work on the new building out here at the Hatfield Marine Science Center. They want to lease a small space at the beginning of the year near the Cherry Farm for parking. And then later in the year for laid out space, a little bit more additional space. This would not be a permanent arrangement, but more for the construction time period. I did communicate with them that we're trying to work out some details with Dulce Energy as well. So basically, we'll make sure that those two don't conflict. We had a houseboat get hung up underneath the terminal Sunday before last. The Coast Guard grabbed it and they called me. So we put it at South Beach and we're going through the process of it's a derelict and we should be able to get rid of it here in about 45 more days. There was a spill of diesel fuel in a commercial marina. The commercial crew got down there, got it managed, filed a report with the Coast Guard and National Response Center. It was from a fishing vessel in Port Dock 7. The notice to proceed has been issued to the contractor to start the dredging over here in the South Beach Marina in mid-January. And then finally today, we had a minor mishap over at the terminal. One of the operators backed the crane into the door of a parked pickup truck. So we contacted our insurance and they're taking care of that right now. Gave the operator 24 hours off. That's not, that's pretty standard for equipment operators, a minimum of 24 hours to get away and just clear the head. We got a different crane operator in there for the day, and then we're appointed an accident investigator to take a look at it.
No injuries? Just
No,
the
everybody's
vehicle?
fine. Everybody's fine. It was a 96 F-250, so it's not a huge value vehicle, but I think the damage that was done, I'd be speculating, but he's going to need a new door and some body work beneath the extended cab rear window. So, but that just happened today, and that's my report.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Aaron?
There it is.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah.
It's just my nature to be aware of the boots on the ground, doing all of the maintenance crew or this crew or that crew. Like you were talking about the maintenance, the lower level, and it is really poor wages, and so you attract not the best people. And so I am happy to hear that that's being tackled, even though you may not have thought you'd have to do it, because you lose the good ones and keep the bad ones when you don't pay enough. And I was disturbed with the talk I had with one of the employees today that, oh man, what do we have to do? So I agree that it needs to be bumped up, but I think we need a more robust evaluation process of everybody and their skills. Because if you attract people that are not very good, you maybe don't want to keep them and attract them better. I asked this person about evaluations, and they had one, and it was just a rubber stamp, and they've been here for 3 years, and other people have been here for 6.5 years, and nothing's changed. And so the only way you can weed it out is to have a robust HR, and just with hiring a manager and operations managers and stuff like that, and the CFO is doing the HR. I just really think it's important to get a better corporate culture going with the port and the personnel on the lower end of the scale, so that people get excited about working for the Port of Newport. Holy crap, I got a job at the Port of Newport, and then they find out, oh my God, I can't afford to work here, or gosh, anyway, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the corporate culture and evaluations, and evaluating everybody, not just the supervisor evaluating the boots on the ground, but someone evaluating the supervisor. So I do see that there's problems in the prison. So I don't have any solutions, but I'm glad to see someone's looking at it.
I think one of the things that I had thought about along those similar lines is that I think one of the things that makes the port very special is that is the services that we provide, and I hear that time and again. And I know that when you compare what you're able to do here in the Port of Newport compared with other ports up and down the coast, it's very different here. The ability to offload and catch right there at the commercial dock at what we charge is very unique. Having said that, I think that we're a big service delivery organization. So I think one of the biggest areas that we got room for improvement for is really hitting home a customer service mentality at all. Some of our service centers are better at it than others, but all of them, that should be the heart of what we do, would be customer service. And so I think that's, going forward, if I had a recommendation for the Port Commission, if you wanted to really hit something hard culture-wise, that would probably be identifying who our customers are and then delivering top-notch service to them across the board. So, and that's and another one would be, like I said, service standards have a lot to do with that because, this time of year is very stressful for a lot of boats that are trying to get gear swapped out and get ready to go fishing. So anytime that somebody's expecting to get service and then doesn't have it for one reason or another, it's really, it gets them concerned. We don't have standards right now that dictate to us that we are required to deliver X amount of service within X time period when a boat pulls up to any one of our docks. And I think we need to develop that so that we can make sure that we're staffed for that, and then so that everybody understands kind of what we're delivering, what we're, and that's more of an internal function. And I think when I bring it up, folks start getting nervous because they're afraid that what's going to happen is what they've always been able to get is going to somehow change, and that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that internally, we need to quantify what we're delivering so that we can manage it properly. That'd be another recommendation I have.
Any other questions? Yes, Jeff.
One of the comments or questions I had in my email to Aaron, we discussed a little bit, was basically I agree with what Aaron says here in his report. It said that he further recommends during the budget cycle for this next year we take a hard look at the pay scale and adjustments needed to compete for labor. But I said we need to take a holistic look at the personnel services. Aaron said absolutely we need to take a holistic look. One thing I did notice, look at numbers, is that we have, I went back and did this a while ago, the 4 years, 2012 and 13 through 2015-16, the actual personnel services averaged under $1 million. The budget for this year was over 1.3. It's a $368,000 increase. But yet we even have some low wages even with that. And so we're talking about raising wages, but we're already... So there's, not that I have a specific question, just that we need to put everything on the table saying, hey, this is a huge increase in what we have had in the past. You're talking about taking a holistic look at the services that are provided and how you provide them. And even hearing from Mark about how just through the accounting staff over the past couple of years, there's been some ebb and flow and some people leave and the people working in South Beach when it's busy, but then they get behind somewhere else. And just taking a holistic look at your manpower throughout the organization looks like it's going to be a pretty big deal for the port. And I know a lot of that's at the general manager level deciding what needs to happen, but all in all, I think this is just going to be a very big issue come this next year, as you've recommended, taking a look at in the next budget cycle.
Yeah, and what I recommended was really a line for modernization across the board. For the best way I could put it is we're caught in about 1998 or 99 as far as technology use in accounting and correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, what we're doing right now is we're using software and computer programs for word processing and data processing, and then manually entering that stuff into another medium somewhere along the line, whether it be QuickBooks or anything else. And nowadays, that's not the way technology is used. It's all used from start to finish, straight through your accounting system so that you can have a database where you have much more visibility on how everything works and where everything's flowing to. And it's a lot more real time. There's always a lag time. This is some of the reason it creates a lot of these different numbers in month-to-month statements, is that there's such a lag time that exists right now for us because we're not making good use of technology. It definitely would take a holistic look at things to, and there are gains to be made there, I think, as far as cutting costs. But that's kind of my recommendation on it. And I mean, with the courts just got behind. I wasn't here obviously, so I don't know for sure. But what I have talking with the employees who've been around longest, it looks like there was about a 5 or 6 year time span there where there were not any bumps in pay or anything like that. And there weren't cost of living adjustments made either. And the trouble with that is the cost of living adjustments, I think, are really important. And as you look at the next year and you look at making adjustments to the scale, you have to remember that $1 today is not worth what it was 20 or 30 years ago. So the same concept exists in the future as well. And if you don't systematically increase that entire scale, not work your way up the scale, and you don't make any increases, what you wind up doing in time is you in effect cut wages. They don't stay the same because the value of the dollar gets less and less and less. The federal government leaves it subjective, but they generally make a 1 to 2% cost of living increase annually. If you listen, the president will come out and issue that to federal employees, military members, and things like that. They leave it up to the president to make that decision because it changes based on inflation rates and budgets and things like that. But I would recommend that the court consider that in the future, not necessarily as a rigid requirement, but as sort of a reminder to the general manager that you might want to make the cost of living, or at least look at it and ask the question. So that's all I got.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. The TCB Public Safety Report, it's there. Does anybody have any questions or remarks on that? Okay, next is Commissioners' Reports. I'm going to give mine next month because I just got back in town and all my stuff is at the office and on the calendar, and I do have a lot of stuff to report. So, Walter, do you have anything?
Yeah, OCZMA meeting, that's Oregon Coastal Zone Management Association. We did approve a letter for submitting, supporting the disaster relief. And OCZMA is counties, cities, soil water conservation districts, ports, and some other small entities. I don't know if we're going to do that or not. The letter should be out next week or so. There's a task force for maritime education that's bringing education of maritime trades to these community colleges. That was also some legislation that was sponsored by the OCZMA. In the past, it was more of a informational networking group. They decided to slim down a little bit. They're going to focus more on legislation, policy, and advocacy. It's being run by AOC, that's Association of Oregon Counties, AOC. That's that, and that's my report.
Stuart?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Jeff?
Today I went to the City of Newport Park and Study Advisory Committee meeting, and as far as issues related to the port, they still had something in their report about efficiencies or space that could be gained at port property, but they downplayed that, hearing that maybe the storage equipment that could be stacked has already been stacked, so they kind of didn't talk too much about that. They did talk about the Derek Tokos wants some information as far as how many permits fishermen have now per year. We have the $6,000 that's is what is the that
Been
is
collected, you mean?
right. The $6,000 for the permit program that goes to the city. Basically, almost like a pass-through, is my understanding, from fishermen to permits to the port, and that goes to the city. They would expand that and have the area from the Pacific plant on down through down close to England. There would be the permits would apply there, but it would be I'm trying to remember how this works now. The west end of the bayfront would be metered parking. And permits would not apply there. So fishermen couldn't park there. But they could use their permits that they have now to park either in the fishermen parking lots or on the street there. But those spaces would also be, like they are now, they would be metered as well. So there's a lot still up in the air that they're still working through, but that's what would affect the port. So.
What's the time frame on any of that?
They didn't have a specific time frame yet. They talked about wanting to try to get out in front of it so it wouldn't have such a negative connotation. Try to say what the positive impacts could be as far as helping out with tourism on the West End, and also having money from the metering that would go to other things that would be of benefit, and also that they would try to mitigate any impacts to residential people in areas, particularly Nye Beach, to fishermen, to locals, that they want to have it improve the traffic flow and have the money go to things that would benefit the community. So, anyway.
Sarah?
I just keep reading and more and more in periodicals and this and that about you read one recently that I think the USDA, or maybe it's just Oregon, is now doing recruiting and trying to get young people involved in the fisheries. And so they're actually going to high schools to, hey, be a fisherman and have a good life and make a lot of money and training and stuff. And I just see that more and more because it's a trend.
Yeah? Okay. All right. I think that wraps it up. Calendar of future events. We have a holiday party on 12/8, 12/19, our regular commission meeting. 12/25, Christmas holiday. Office is closed. Next, I'll open it up to public comment. Anybody have anything they'd like to say? Yes. Mr. Jinks.
My name is David Jinks, live here in Newport. A couple things to comment on. One is the table, the matrix used on the table. That was a 4-year project by the Port Commission, by employees, by staff, by management, to create that matrix and to break us away from what we were accustomed to of using COLAs and CPIs. That was a train wreck. It was a disaster for the port. We felt, and even the employees felt it was wrong using COLAs, to the fact that sometimes it would reward people that weren't doing their jobs, and they were more interested in incentive pay increases than COLAs. That's why we developed the matrices there. It's an incentive pay matrix. And so you go through your reviews, you're evaluated, and then you can move up on the scale. And the scale was set to be competitive with usually what a CPI is. But when you start dealing with COLAs and CPIs, you have to understand what they are first, what the port offers. The port offers health insurance. That's 30% of the CPI. It offers work clothing. That's another 10%. So when you start knocking those percentages off of what you offer, we offer education. That's a CPI. So that's part of the CPI also. So you start removing those, and you get down to a real slim margin. And so that's what we were dealing with in those issues when we developed this matrix. And that's not saying that pay schemes and matrices need to be reviewed constantly, and this one does, just for the fact that minimum wage increased. We need to drop that level and increase the other level. So, but it's a working document, and I'd hate to see it scrapped, or I'd hate to see the port go back to COLAs again. Incentive-based pay scales is a better way to go, and I think it's more fair to the employees. Second issue is it's on the NOAA doc. I was one of the reviewers on the SFO. The sole control was one of the items we looked at really closely, since the port didn't write any of the lease at all. We were submittals to the SFO, and so when we were reviewing it, that was one of the issues. And we felt more comfortable at the time living with NOAA having sole control, because we did this. The same discussions you had here were discussions we had at that time. Walter, you probably remember them. And some of the incidental use we discussed with them at the time. any incidental uses with scripts, it was this vessel or that vessel, or it might be COE coming in and using the dock. But it was under sole control of no one. And so we felt more comfortable at that time than doing anything different, than opening it up or saying, well, you're going to bring these boats in, we should collect a fee on it. Well, that opens up sole control. So I would take a really close look at that legally before I did anything different with no one on that. And then the last issue is Port Dock 1. I believe it's in 2010, Port Dock 1 was estimated at $800,000 in repairs to bring it up to standard use. It's had failing cross members and pilings. I think that trying to use that as a landing dock for heavy use is just going to accelerate the damage to that dock and put it out of service. So I caution you on that, and the fact that Sea Lion Foundation still hasn't completed their walkway yet that's supposed to be adjacent to that pier. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Write some notes. Anybody else? Public comment? Okay. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you. I have no idea how to stop this thing.